Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar hosted by the American Public Human Services Association, or APHSA, in partnership with Accenture. Today's webinar topic is Tech Vision 2025, What's Next for Human Services and Public Sector AI. Next slide, please. My name is Marie Camito, and I'm a meeting planner at APHSA. I'd like to take a few moments to share a little bit about who we are and the work we're proud to do alongside our members. At APHSA, we represent human services agencies and leaders at the state and local level across the country. We're a bipartisan organization dedicated to building common ground and generating practical solutions that work for people and communities. Next slide, please. We aim to advance the well-being of individuals, families, and communities through three core channels: influencing modern approaches to sound policy, building the capacity of public agencies, and connecting leaders to accelerate learning and generate practical solutions. And our overall vision is thriving communities built on human potential. Next slide, please. I'd like to take a moment to remind everyone of our upcoming conferences for the year. We have ISM coming up right around the corner in Reno, Nevada, followed by both NSDTA and PHSA in October. For more information on our conferences and to register, please visit the events page at aphsa.org. Next slide, please. We'd also like to remind everyone to take advantage of the Career Center on our website. The APHSA Career Center connects hiring managers with qualified professionals in the human services sector. It offers job seekers access to a wide range of career opportunities while providing employers and agencies with tools to post openings and find top talent efficiently. We encourage all of you to take advantage of it. Now, before I turn it over to our moderator, just a couple housekeeping items. You'll notice this webinar is being recorded. You will all receive the recording along with a copy of the slides in the coming days. During this webinar, we request that you use the Q&A feature to send questions to our presenters. The normal Zoom chat function has been disabled for the session, so you really want to take advantage of that Q&A function. You will see a Q&A button at the bottom of your window. Our panelists will do their best to answer as many of your questions as possible live during the webinar, and will also save some time at the end as well. Next slide, please. Now, with that being said, it's my pleasure to introduce the moderator for our webinar, Eyal Darman, Public Service Data, AI, and Gen AI Lead at Accenture. Take it away, Eyal.
Thank you, Marie, and thank you everyone for joining our webcast today. As Marie mentioned, we're going to talk about the Tech Vision 2025, really what's next for human services and public sector when it comes to this new technology of AI that probably all of us are thinking is no longer new anymore. It's been around for the last couple of years, and it's slowly but surely making a difference in the work that we do across human services and the public sector. Our webinar today focuses on how AI and human services is really highlighting and trust building, talking about workforce transformation and really resident experiences as they interact with agencies and getting benefits and support. These technologies will continue to enhance and continue to change the way we do work. And as I think about how this influences human services, our conversation today will really highlight that. We've got both experts from government and from the research space, and they're going to share highlights about how AI is being adopted, ethical considerations on AI, as well as really practical implementations in the human services space. With that, I'll turn it over to our panel, and we'll start with Shanita to do an introduction, and then we'll go next to Alexa.
Hello, my public service heroes. I'm so excited to be here with all of you today and honored to be able to talk to you about the New Mexico experience, and really privileged to be able to share serving all of our public sector participants with you today. So my name is Shanita Harrison. I have been with the New Mexico Healthcare Authority for about the last 2 decades. I worked mostly in the business side, really running field operations for about 17 years, and transferred over to the IT side about 2020, and have really look to see how we can transform technology to help our customers have a better and more delightful experience with government services. So excited to be here with you all today. And I will pass it to Alexa.
Shanita, I absolutely love your angle of both business and technology. Sometimes people have just business, sometimes they have just technology, but you blend the two very well to help serve New Mexicans. So super excited for this conversation today. Alexa, we'll turn it over to you next.
Hi, I'm Alexa Jager. I'm a Health and Public Service Research Specialist with our Accenture research team. I focus on researching emerging technologies and their applications in the public sector space and how they're being adopted by public sector agencies as well as received by citizens. I've been with Accenture Public Service Research for the past 6 years, I think. So I've been seeing how the AI narrative has been shifting over the past few years, and it's been cool to see so much has changed in just the past couple of years.
Yeah, and I think, Alexa, your lens on research across all public sector industries, I think, is really telling about if we're seeing more in one space versus another, and really how we're seeing human services be impacted. Let's get started with a question, maybe to each of you. And let's talk a little bit about what excites you the most about the future of AI in the health and human services space. Shanita, I'll go to you first.
Sure, thanks, Al. I really think that we're living in a time where we're in a pivotal moment where AI is going to change not just how we work, but how we live, right? We're seeing it in our day-to-day. We use ChatGPT for easy tasks and to help us perform. So I really am excited to see how AI can transform the government experience, how it can take mundane tasks from our workforce so they can really focus on the personal aspects that we need to do our work. We're in the human services business, so AI is really a tool to connect our technology and our people to do our work better. I think we can use it to improve our customer services, to create experiences that, again, delight our customers, and to create opportunities for our workforce so we can continue to find use cases for automation that will allow us to really focus on our human-centered tasks, like listening to people, problem solving, creating empathy and compassion, which is what humans do best. And so AI can help us with being able to build a public trust by improving our government response rates and really allowing humans to do what humans do best and allowing technology to do what technology does best.
That's great. Alexa, how about yourself? What do you think is the most exciting thing from your vantage point on the future of AI?
I think a lot of the things I'm excited about are in the same vein as Shanita. I would say that I think anyone who's worked with government services or accessed government services as a resident can testify that sometimes the processes can be very complex. There's a lot of moving parts, and it can sometimes be hard to navigate if you're not an expert, knowing which office to call and to get certain benefits. And of course, for citizens, a lot of time when we're looking at social services or public safety, I mean, you're accessing these services on the worst day of your life. And I think AI holds a really good potential to make it easier and more intuitive to navigate, to make this very big, nebulous, complex ecosystem of government services more approachable for citizens, as well as make every employee an expert. With AI in their back pocket, they'll be able to navigate these interagency complexities so much more smoothly. And I think that's something that really excites me, is ultimately streamlining the complexity of accessing government services.
No, I think that's great. I mean, the thing that excites me the most actually about this space is it's a little bit about how we got here. Over the last 2 years, it felt like a hammer looking for nails. Everyone was so excited about this technology, but they were just looking for problems that this technology can solve. And I don't find that that's the right approach to this technology. I think of it in the other direction. I think we have business problems, and AI should help us as a tool in our toolbox to solve those business problems. In some cases, it could be what I would call legacy AI. So it could be machine learning. It could be some of the more newer technologies like generative AI or agentic AI. And I've started to see the shift from the hype of the excitement to more practical uses of it. And I think now that we're starting to see practical implementations that go beyond a pilot, I'm excited to see that now become just part of the workflow of the specific business processes in the human services space. That to me is where we're going to start to see the full adoption, and it's going to stop being that shiny coin that people want to experiment with. I think now we've done enough experimentation. I'm excited to see it actually start to get embedded within our workflows and really help us change the way we serve residents, the way we have our workforce be able to support residents in their various needs. So I'm excited about that shift from like excitement to now let's get down to practical uses of it. Alexa, I'm going to turn over to you to go through the next couple slides and really talk a little bit about, how do we build trust in AI, and some of the other topics around workforce and the resident experience. So Alexa, I'll turn it over to you.
So we can move to the next slide. Basically, I want to walk us through some research data points that come from both our annual Tech Vision survey, the public sector cut. Accenture does a Tech Vision survey every year. And then in addition, we have a couple data points in here from our resident experience, public service experience survey, which is a larger survey of citizens and public service workforce that we attempt to do every couple of years. So we've got some survey respondents from both public sector executives, frontline workforce, as well as residents that we're gonna look at just a couple highlights of as we sort of explore where AI and the public sector are. This first slide is, I think, one of the most important things that needs to carry throughout today's discussion, and that is AI and trust. We're at a point where the technology is incredibly adaptable, and we're no longer limited necessarily by the technology in terms of what use cases and what we can accomplish. At this point, it seems as though some of the limiting factors of AI, it's the trust of the workforce and of the residents in using the technology. So we have here that 73% of public service executives believe that unlocking the true benefits of AI will only be possible when built on a foundation of trust. And 76% agree that their organization will need to prioritize a trust strategy that evolves in parallel with their technology strategy. And this is similar to what we've been discussing about business and technology strategies being sort of one and the same, intrinsically connected. At this point, trust is part of that recipe as well. Currently, from our citizen survey, we found that less than half of residents are confident that their governments can use AI responsibly. And this is crucial because AI's full potential won't be reached if people aren't adopting the tools, if people don't feel comfortable using AI-powered services and are always going to, press 0 for representative or show up in person at an office, we're not going to see those benefits. So this trust strategy is going to really rely on some proactive transparency, communication, efforts around security of citizen data. Obviously, we need to have some guardrails for ethics and equity. And then another big factor of building trust in AI-powered tools is their efficacy and benefits for the users. People are going to be more inclined to trust a new technology that actually measurably makes their experiences better. So we need to be able to demonstrate a measurable improvement, whether it's a reduction in wait time or faster services, to show people why they should be using the AI. People are more likely to trust something that's also going to be effective. And then we can move to the next slide. And now that we've sort of laid that foundation of trust, I want to get into some of our tech vision trends from this year. Our first trend focuses on the exponential expansion of AI and how it's upending systems across agencies. Gen AI and agentic systems are completely revolutionizing how we are going to be designing our digital ecosystems. Now we're thinking about where can we automate? Where is there a new use case? Where can we use AI to real time optimize where we're allocating our resources, ultimately with the goal of freeing up workforce time to do more value add tasks. Now, sorry, I'm trying to recall which data points came from what. Yes, okay. Our first two data points that we have here are from our experience survey. We have 69% of public service workers feel that AI is going to reduce their workload by automating routine tasks. So 69% of the workforce, they're eager to adopt these AI tools because, as many of us know, the public sector workforce is spread thin. They're being asked to do a lot with very little, and they're eager for tools that are going to reduce their workload. However, we also have on the resident side that 83% say that having access to a human representative for complex issues is important, even if digital tools could automate most interactions. So this gets to the point that when we talk about how AI can revolutionize our digital ecosystems and our ways of working, many people start to get concerned about, are we replacing the entire workforce with AI? This demonstrates that the human touch in government service is not going away. Residents want access to people. These are highly emotionally charged, sensitive, complex issues, and they want to be able to access a human when they need it. And now AI obviously enables us to free up the workforce from administrative tasks to more in-person tasks that require that human touch. So this gets into what are some of the spaces that AI agents can be most useful, will be most impactful. We have over 1/3 of public service executives anticipate a significant increase in AI agent usage over the next 3 years. And the parts of their organization that they anticipate being the greatest users are finance, IT, sustainability, customer service, and HR. So as you can see here, we have a bit of a customer service facing AI to streamline, basic customer requests. But a lot of these other areas where we see AI agents and generative AI being most impactful are back office spaces that will, again, free up the workforce to be more front facing.
Shanita, let me just step in here. What part of your organization with the healthcare authority do you anticipate to be the biggest AI adopters?
Well, we have really started using AI when it comes to our contact center, but really as an agent enabler. So helping our agents to be able to provide that human touch with the customer. So creating transcription, the ability to transcribe the call with the customer so they can actually focus on the customer's needs and not writing down the summary of the call. That's a good place and a good place that we've been adopting right now. I do think there's a good use case for AI analytics and being able to get data through conversational style. So leaders in the public sector space can make good decisions based on data, but not have to be SQL series, experts on how to pull data and how to analyze that. So really being able to just pull data through conversational language, I think is a really good place that public sector would be able to start. I think we are drowning in paper. Public sector entities get drowned in paper. We get a lot of paper documents that then, if we were able to turn that digital with using something like intelligent document processing, that we could ingest the data into our eligibility systems and create real-time eligibility decisions or real-time address updates, things that are a little bit smaller for the technology to do instead of really needing that human touch. I think those are really good areas where we could start with, automating some of our tasks.
Yeah, your example about how to start using AI analytics, like chat with your data, is a good one. I can share kind of personally at Accenture, we do that. We have 800,000 employees. Our C-suite, our leadership team in the US use conversational AI, Gen AI powered against our data, that talk about the various things that are important to those leaders in order to help them essentially sift all this amazing information into something that, like you said, you don't need to be a SQL expert, or you don't see it stale because the report was generated a week ago or a day ago or hours. You see it in real time. You're able to really ask questions against it. That's great.
Yeah, we have a couple questions in the chat. One of them being, how do we responsibly use AI tools when AI is known to hallucinate and relay false information?
I think that's a good question. The way we've been able to, and in our implementations at Accenture, really focus on the responsible AI aspect of it is to make sure that as you're setting up and configuring it, what I call the temperature of the solution is configurable. Now, what is the temperature? The temperature is if Alexa has a question and the corpus of data that is being used to answer that question doesn't have a definitive answer, or it may have two answers. Today, if I go to ChatGPT and I ask that, it's forced to give me an answer. Even if you ask it, why'd you give me the wrong answer? I'll say, well, I'm forced to give you an answer, whatever it is. I can't say I don't know. But when we implement it at the enterprise level, so one of Shanita's contact center agents, if they're using a policy bot, if they're using any sort of AI in order to assess something, if the answer is not definitive, then the answer from the bot will be, I don't know. Or here's the answer in two different places, so you can understand the context of them and be able to define it. That's how you can reduce hallucinations. That's how you can make sure that the solutions you're implementing at an enterprise level and in government, which has a higher bar, I think, than the private sector, are able to minimize hallucinations in the responses.
Thanks. We have one more. How can we ensure that data provided during a call doesn't end up leaking into a model where we get stuck paying for protections forever?
Yeah, I think that's another good question. Again, it's in the configuration of the solution. When you're configuring a AI solution that is for a contact center, frankly, for any enterprise use case, you want to make sure that that information is set up in a secure environment. It's set up behind the firewalls. So for example, a lot of our contact center implementations are leveraging AWS technologies. And what we're doing is we're making sure that that AWS environment that's being used has been certified to be used not just with that client, but has been approved by the CISO, approved to use, and has all the security structures in place that you're behind a agency or a department or a government firewall before actually turning it on. That way you prevent any leakage. Just like you have data in your cloud today, you're preventing any leakage to those. This is just additional data in your contact center and in your cloud solution. Okay, Alexa, I'll turn it back to you.
We can move to the next slide. Now, this is a topic that I personally think is really exciting and important. And this is about the face of government AI and the personality, quote unquote, of personified AI. And this is really important for that trust concept we were discussing earlier. And it's when we're designing AI tools, whether they're working with the workforce or with citizens themselves, and especially in those cases, we do have to think about what is the personality, what is the voice of any generative AI response. Because generic AI experiences leave citizens feeling disconnected or suspicious. We need to craft a voice and entry window that aligns with public values. It needs to be transparent, empathetic, and clearly professional and government owned. Recently, I had a friend who was interacting with a government service, and she received an email that the template was so outdated and kind of messy looking that she thought it was spam, not from a government agency. And so that gets sort of to what we're talking about, is the importance of it being government owned. And that's more so true in the case of generative AI or any sort of AI experience where the trust is already low. People are already skeptical of certain digital government services. This is also not just a sort of a wary warning, make sure that your AI is professional and transparent. It's also an opportunity. Governments can develop an AI voice that has adaptive personalization that can go beyond demographic data and integrate real-time sentiment analysis, past interactions, and contextual awareness. An AI customer service agent that could detect when a resident is getting frustrated and adapt the tone to be empathetic and clearer and sort of slow down the information to address emerging sentiment from a resident in real time. Here we have that 99% of public service executives state that maintaining a consistent AI personality is going to be critical for customer-facing agents in the next 3 years. And that gets again to a consistent branding and a consistent voice builds that trust. It makes it feel professional, managed, and just overall more trustworthy. We also have 73% of public service executives agree that conversational interactions using generative AI can become a way to gather relevant customer data and provide tailored services. And 75% obviously believe that proactive trust building between personified AI and citizens is going to be essential.
Shanita, we've talked about trust here when it comes to residents trusting the AI. We talked a little bit about some of the questions that were asked around the trust and the answers that an AI produces. What do you think is essential to foster trust for AI when it comes to the residents in New Mexico?
Well, we talked about it a lot today, and transparency, right? Being transparent about what AI can do and what it can't do. Ensuring equity and fairness. So, we don't want to have any hallucinations or any kind of inequity in the use of AI. Always having that human oversight, right? So in New Mexico, we really try to, in all technology that we employ, we really try to ensure that we do human-centered design, and we always have the user at the heart of every technology that we employ. So as we're creating new technologies, whether it's AI or not AI, really having usability studies, having our customers use it, give us real life feedback so we can make it better for them. Ensuring data privacy and security is always important, right? We have, as agents of federal information, we have to make sure that that's protected in a way that's compliant with all of our federal oversight and our state rules. So we need to ensure that the data privacy and security is held with the really top importance. And keeping our community engaged and in the forefront, like I said, again, using that human-centered design. And then at the end of the day, it's to demonstrate value, that this technology makes the services better, that this technology gets the customer something that they need either faster or better than in ways that we've done before, removing barriers so they can get access to these benefits quicker. And I really like to emphasize creating a delightful experience, right? So if you can have an experience that you might have with Amazon or your online grocery shopping or something that people have in their everyday lives, we need to try to create that same type of experience for our customers. While we might not have a net promoter score or a way where customers have to come back to us, we might be the only option they have, but we do have a competitor, and that competitor is poverty. And we really want to be able to use the technology to ensure that we can make lives for New Mexicans and everywhere better.
No, that's fantastic. There's a couple of questions in the chat. I'm going to go through them. There's a question about what do we mean by hallucination? So I apologize for not defining it earlier. That's just fancy for the AI got it wrong. It gave you the wrong answer. And that's just an industry term that someone thought it'd be better to call it a hallucination than to say that it just was wrong. There's another question around, are there think tanks in Washington, D.C. that are pushing for legislative frameworks that offer ethical boundaries for the use of AI? I think there's going to be more frameworks around ethical boundaries of use of AI. If you think about the EU AI Act, really has covered it in Europe. But we are not structured that way in the US. And so you see some of it happening at the state level. The feds currently have an AI action plan. I think you'll see in the coming years even more direction around ethical use and what is areas where this technology should not be used in. I'll give you the prime example. We should never have AI auto-determination benefits. It should really be something where, as Shanita mentioned earlier, there's always a human in the loop. I like to call it a human at the helm, making sure and providing oversight over some of these key actions and decisions that occur. There's a couple more questions. Alexa, can you maybe define what do you mean by an AI voice? There are a couple of questions around a little bit better on what AI voice really means.
We're saying an AI voice, we're talking about the tone and personality. It gets down to the language of AI generated responses. So think, when you type in something to ChatGPT or something like that, how colloquial maybe it will reply, how friendly, how empathetic versus very robotic and only facts. So when we say voice, we're genuinely talking about the way it's constructing responses, whether that's in written word or actually auditory at this point. Most AIs are generating typed responses, but it's the tone and word choice that sort of conveys a personality.
Shania, there's a question here that maybe you're best equipped to answer. There's some chatter around, we want to make sure we're helping residents, we're supporting them, we're helping them potentially come out of poverty or not be forever dependent on government services. The question is how can we leverage AI to make substantive changes in people's lives, really break cycles of maybe generational poverty or health impacts? Any thoughts on that when it comes to New Mexico, how you're thinking about that?
I mean, I think that's our job. I think that's our job as public servants, and being able to serve our customers. And the way I look at it, really making substantive changes, is how do we make it easier for people? How do we make it easier for them to not worry about whether or not they can get their, child to the dentist, so that way they can work on things like getting employment or sustaining employment. And if we're able to take away some of those, key social determinants of health in order for them to focus on things that they need to do to improve, that will make substantial changes in people's lives. And so how we create access to services, how we create trust with the government that we're going to help you in the time that you need help. I personally think that does make substantial changes in people's lives to be able to maintain their lives in a better way.
Yeah, there's a couple of questions here around the use of AI that is providing maybe equitable access, or maybe the lack thereof, because it is not providing equal access, or it can create a barrier to this to access to government services, whether it's vernaculars or literacy or accents. And there's a comment here about that AI hallucinations in AI could really impact how a language and accent really is not interpreting it correctly. Here's what I would share, and this is a trend. It's not perfect, but it is a trend. What I've seen across the board is AI has gotten not just better and better, but it's gotten to a point where it is able to assess different accents, different vernacular, and really better interpret it. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. Is it as good as a human who has and interacts with a customer that has, or resident that has those conversations with them? I think it's as good, or in some cases even better. What I've seen is, and I'll give you an example from one of our international clients. Back in the kind of late, pre-pandemic days, we saw in our client in Ireland just the Irish accent not being able to be interpreted with AI. Frankly, I think sometimes when I hear someone who's speaking an Irish accent, it doesn't sound like they're speaking in English. It's really confusing. Now, that being said, the AI now has enough data set of Irish accents to be able to interpret and understand the different accents as part of any conversation. Now, are we seeing that across every AI implementation? No. I still call my airline if I need a change of flight, and I still say, because I hear it's a very robotic voice, and I do the same thing all of us do. I say agent 4 times, and I get to a person. Will those things start to fundamentally change? Yes. I called my credit company the other day, and the conversation was a much more fluent conversation. And I thought to myself, this is different. I don't have to say agent. Maybe I can get the answer in this AI voice conversation. And so I think what we'll see is that exponential growth. And I'll share an example that I use with a lot of our clients. Is there's a company called Sesame AI. You can Google them and you can do their free like demonstration of their AI voice. That AI voice sounds like I'm talking to a real person. It discloses that you're still talking to an AI, but the way the conversation flow goes, significantly different and better by a long shot to some of the other technologies that many of us probably have experienced and are forming our opinions based on that. So just something to think about as this technology evolves is there's newer and newer capabilities that are available out there. Alexa, there's a few more questions in the chat. Let's do this. Let's go through some more of the materials and then I'll go back to the chat with some additional questions.
Another use case we were talking about with some of our public service experience research is the idea of using AI to sort of predict what types of issues and calls and residents most need in-person services. And in many cases, that is people who are less digitally savvy, perhaps at a lower income level, maybe their English isn't as good. And the way we can sort of set up an AI triage that helps connect people who need that human support most with human services as opposed to with an AI bot. In addition, we can move on to the next slide then. The new learning loop. Public servants are ultimately going to shape the future of how AI is used. Think about it this way. It's different from when a tool with a very specific use case is rolled out in your organization. Here's this tool, it accomplishes this task, use it in that way. This is more comparable to maybe the rise of Microsoft Office. You have a spreadsheet or Microsoft Word, and you can use it in a plethora of ways. And the workforce is always finding new use cases for these tools. Generative AI takes that to the next level. It really puts the power in the hands of the public servants who are using it. And what this means is the most innovative use cases and the biggest efficiency gains are ultimately going to be discovered by the frontline workers. I mean, who knows better the places to unlock some additional efficiency than the people who are actually on the ground working with these tools. So this trend really focuses on sort of an iterative learning loop where public servants are using AI, discovering new use cases and workflows, and then learning from the AI who's learning more from the public service in sort of an iterative loop of innovation. 96% of our public service executives expect tasks performed by employees to significantly shift towards innovation in the next 3 years. And 72% believe that only by building trust with employees will organizations be able to fully capture the benefits of automation enabled by generative AI. Because if it is the employees who are going to be unlocking these new efficiency gains and use cases with these tools, the employees have to trust the tools, be willing to adopt the tools. The employees have to feel comfortable that they are training a tool that is going to work alongside them and not replace them. They have to feel confident that they can experiment with this tool without threatening their job or making a mistake that's going to harm citizens. So this also relies on having clear guidelines for responsible use so that employees feel comfortable innovating and experimenting with these tools within sort of safe boundaries. We also have 74% of our executives agree that communicating their organization's AI strategy to employees is critical to building trust with them.
Shanita, there's a question in the chat that I think is applicable to this topic about how the workforce is really impacted. And the question is how have you built trust with staff members in using AI tools and being onboarded to these new processes?
Well, in New Mexico, we really try to make the lives easier of our workers, right? And so that's where we first get buy-in is when I'm looking for use cases for automation, whether that's through AI or a different set of technology. I always try to ask, what don't you want to do today? What is the task that you like least that you want to do today? And then we look at how we automate those. And then the other thing that we do is we really include our staff as part of the development process. So there was another question about, doing pilots and making sure the transcriptions that we do are correct. Well, we roll out very slowly with some of these new types of technology, and we get the feedback from our workers step by step as we're doing it, so they can help us make it better. And that really helps them to be part of the process, to trust the technology, and to have a voice in the development as we go.
There's a couple questions, Shanita, around that I think in your segment next we'll cover. It really talks about what are some real life examples of not pilots, not experiments, not in a sandbox, but in use within an organization. So Shanita's going to cover one of those examples from New Mexico. We can share some others as well. With that, let's turn it over to Shanita to talk about our New Mexico case study and talk about how New Mexico is really transforming customer service using AI. If we go to the next slide.
Again, I'm Shanita Harrison from the New Mexico Healthcare Authority, and we have looked at different ways to use different types of technology to innovate our customer service in New Mexico. So if we want to move to the next slide, please. So here at the Healthcare Authority, our mission is to ensure New Mexicans attain their highest level of health by providing whole person, cost-effective, accessible, and high quality healthcare and safety net services. And we really look at healthcare as the entire ecosystem of the person. So are they, getting enough to eat? Are they able to take care of their children? And so that's why healthcare just isn't always about Medicaid. It's about all of the programs that can really help support New Mexicans. And part of my job as the Deputy CIO is to innovate technology and data-driven decision to make unparalleled accesses to services information. So it's really about connecting the technology and the humans to improve our services overall. So if we can move to the next slide, please. So New Mexico is very highly impacted in our entire population. So as of right now, we support 843,661 New Mexicans. And we're a state that has about a population of about 2 million. So we're at 40% of the state's population relies on New Mexico Healthcare Authority benefits. And so that our reach in New Mexico is really wide. And not only do we impact, just about half of the state with direct services, it also impacts the rest of the state by, if you're a healthcare provider, you are likely supported by the Medicaid budget, or if you're a grocery store, you're likely supported by the SNAP budget. So what we do in New Mexico really impacts not only the people that we serve, but the economy as a total. We implemented our Consolidated Customer Service Center in 2020, and with that, we took about 80 different phone numbers and created one phone number for customers and one for providers. And since we have created the Consolidated Customer Service Center, we have had over 9 million calls, and many of those through virtual agents or virtual chats, which would require no touch and be able to be available to New Mexicans 24/7 to get answers to their questions. So next slide, please. So part of what we've done in New Mexico, which I think is going to go to answer some of the questions, is we have we do have a chatbot. We are in the process of updating that chatbot to answer questions for customers. And so there's general questions that they can answer, like, hey, I'm hungry, how do I go about feeding my kids? Or here's some authentication information about me. Can you please tell me when my next renewal is? And so there are some things that we have done. We have also created the transcription tool, which we call the Agent Assist for our call center agents, which allows them, again, to really concentrate on the call with the customer. And then it provides a transcription of the call and then a summary at the end. And the summary is conducted in a way where it will be federally compliant for anyone who's doing a review or an edit of the case to be able to turn that into a case comment. That also creates the sentiment analysis that Alexa was talking about earlier, where we can tell if a customer is getting frustrated or upset, and we can escalate that to a manager if needed to. And it also provides knowledge article suggestions, right? So if you've ever been a call center agent or you've ever had to answer questions very quickly, you can get kind of stressed out trying to see like, okay, I know that this is a knowledge article somewhere, or where's that job aid that I know that will tell me about SNAP student eligibility, right? But this will listen to the words that the customer is saying and help the agent to be able to suggest those. That doesn't mean they have to use those. They can still search for what they need to do. They're still in control. The human is still at the helm, as EL says, but it helps them to access that information quicker. And so those are kind of the highlights of what we've done in New Mexico. There are more things that we've done when it comes to just automating tasks for our agents and for our workforce in general, and creating really seamless customer experiences for New Mexicans.
I think that last part is, I want to double click on that because we talked about this in the beginning. You need to think, you have business problems, you have opportunities to help improve resident experiences or the workforce experience. And as Shanita described, some things are machine learning, some things are legacy AI, they're natural language processing, some things are newer, they're generative AI, summarizations to calls. When you think about this technology, it's a spectrum. And there's opportunities to use things that have been around for maybe 15, 20 years to create more automation. And that solves your business problem, then that's fantastic. It's more reliable, it's been around for a long time. And as you think about other things, that other business problems you have, there now are essentially new solutions to those problems that you have. Let me go to some questions here. There's a couple of questions around how do we make sure, there's a question here from Susanna around what are the AI examples of in the human services space, other examples of things that AI is used to help essentially streamline access to benefits. Shanita mentioned a handful of those. I'll give you one other example. When you think about something that's kind of top of mind for all of us, SNAP error rates, I think about what is that, how can AI help enhance or in maybe said differently, reduce SNAP error rates? And what we're seeing is we're seeing the ability to use, as Shanita mentioned, intelligent document processing, take the document intake, review any other requirements that are associated with that. Use that to help make sure that you can reduce the error associated with a SNAP application, and use that technology to ultimately help reduce human errors of processing those specific applications. So don't think of it as automating, but think of it as augmenting the worker and another tool to support them. And that's a lot of the cases that we're seeing is we're giving workers another tool to help support them along the way. There's another question around cost cutting versus trust, with the workforce enhancement. And the question is, we've seen a lot of organizations focus on cost cutting recently, and they're using AI to do that cost cutting, but could organizations strike that balance? And I would tell you from experience, I think there is a balance of that. It depends on what the driving force of the change is. In some cases, you may not have a choice and you need to reduce some of your costs because of budget constraints. AI can help you with that. But AI can also help you with improving the experience of a worker. When we survey our call center agents, we're seeing lower attrition. We're seeing a more satisfied employee that's using these tools. As a result, they're providing better services to customers because they're happier at work. They feel like they're getting the right tools to be able to do the work that they're assigned to do. And so we see a little bit of that. It really depends on the burning platform for using AI here, but it could be a little bit of both, not just cost cutting, but certainly could be a situation around improving the experience of the worker. I'll go to one more question around, there's a recent MIT report that talks about how most pilots fail. And does that indicate that technology is not in the place where government can start using it? So that's an interesting thing. I've actually read that report and talked about it with some of my colleagues and some other folks in the industry. Here's what I would tell you about that MIT report. First, to actually get to the actual report itself is a little bit impossible because it's not published. It's by request to get it. But once you get it and look at the data that is being used, I'm not sure if it's statistically sound. It focuses on sales and marketing, and the answers don't seem to be consistent across all industries about the pilots that aren't successful. Another thought around this is that the intent of a pilot is to try something. It's not to always put it into production. And by design, a concept of a pilot is to do an experiment. So I wouldn't expect it to be 100% go into production at scale. Now, that being said, I think we've seen a lot of examples of pilots that have been tried and have been gone into production. We've seen also some circumstances where the pilot has been very successful, but we're waiting for a funding cycle in order to actually scale it at a state level or at an agency level. So we're seeing a little bit of that may be creating some deterrence. That statistic has kind of rattled the industry. I think MIT came out saying they're not really sure exactly what that research means, and I think part of it is because once that report came out, it was pulled into mainstream media with a real intent of sharing that, and it resulted in companies lowering their market valuation based on that report. So there's been a lot of controversy around that since then. There's a couple other questions, and I'll try to cover them. Jennifer, you had a question about trying to get more experience about how frontline workers might be able to implement and use AI. Hopefully we covered some of that in today's conversation. The way I would think about it is think of the things that you do on a regular basis as a frontline worker, and could AI augment those activities? I use AI agents today to do various things that are in my day-to-day work. And I think if you think about a worker, a frontline worker, they can certainly apply some of that as well. You also had a question around examples of AI that's being used on back-end data analysis to understand clients better. One example that we're seeing is, in some cases, and maybe a good example is maybe child welfare, where you've got cases there are volumes of data. We've used AI to summarize those cases for the caseworker. Now, that's not saying they can't go into the data to do additional analysis of it, but it gives them a first glimpse at the information around that case when they pick up that case. Does it replace the caseworker? Absolutely not. Does it make the caseworker more efficient because now they don't have to read every piece of that volume of data? They can read certain areas and then go in and go deeper into certain areas of their analysis? Absolutely. And so that's one way to think about, this technology is really good about analyzing large volumes of data. And that's something that is very good. I think I'm down to my last question in the chat. There's a question around, how can public sector avoid, falling into the trap that sometimes is the promise of AI? People say that AI can transform everything and anything. And how can we make sure that public sector organizations avoid falling into that trap of believing something that may not be there yet, maybe more of a promise than reality, and really evaluating and procuring the right AI solutions? Here's my advice to you. A lot of AI solutions are out there in the marketplace. Every organization has a .ai or has an AI feature that they think is the best thing since sliced bread. I would rely on the ecosystem partners and technology partners that you have today and the technologies that they've enhanced with AI. Don't think of an AI as a solution, but think of it as a feature in the existing technologies that you have. So if you're using Salesforce has Agentforce, which is amazing AI capabilities, and that's already baked in and pre-built into the Salesforce solution. If you're using AWS, and in AWS you're doing other things in the cloud, then you should use AWS Bedrock for your AI solution. You got to think of it as a feature, not I'm going to go procure some technology, and that's one way to think about this space. I think I jinxed it, Shanita and Alexa, because as I said, we were on our last comment. We got 2 more comments. So let me cover them quickly. Will there be Q&A emailed to all call attendees? I'll defer to Marie on that. I believe there will be a recording that we posted on the APHSA website. Marie, can you confirm on the Q&A that's going to be available to folks?
Well, any Q&A that was answered live will be included in the recording.
Great, thank you. And then there's a question around for child welfare. Would you be able to set up? Sorry, I lost. Would you be able to set it up that it would give some of the necessary specific reason we are involved, and then summarize the rest? Patricia, that's exactly the way I would think about it. When we configure these solutions for clients, it's not the out-of-the-box configuration. It's tailored to the way you need it for that summary. I'll go back to the call center example. Every call center wants to have a different summary, a different tone, a different tenor, a different style, a different format. And some call centers ask different things. So in New Mexico, the call center is asking different things of maybe customers. We want that included in the summary. In a different state, you have a different format, a different layout that agency wants to have their summary in. And so that is very much a configuration when you set this technology up. And last question. We'll take other questions maybe after the call. Last question. How can government take these AI solutions that have data protection built in to work with nonprofit partners and community who often complement public benefits with engagement and coaching and assistance with applications? I think data sharing is probably a whole other webinar around data sharing between government and nonprofits. So I'll leave the data sharing concept to the side. I will tell you, as government organizations, you have a lot of data about your residents. And one of your primary responsibility is the trust that your residents have with you, and to make sure that that data is protected and that data is not exposed and not given to people that it shouldn't be given to. And so I think maybe a precursor to this question is really, how is the right data sharing agreements should be structured, and the consent of the resident to be comfortable with that information being shared. With that, we'll go to the next slide, and we kind of highlighted our call to action. I think the thing that I would share with folks that I've experienced over the last couple of years, working with Shanita, working with other government organizations in this space, is really, what are the things that you guys should ask as questions when you think about this technology? The couple questions that I would ask you to think about is, 1, are my people ready? What do I need to do to educate? What do I need to do to bring together the right leaders, the right sponsors, but the workforce, the people that are fingers on keyboard doing work today? And how do I educate them? How do I bring them up in this space? And how do I make them, as we talked about earlier, make them feel comfortable with this capability so that they can trust it and leverage it? So that's one thing. Are my people ready? Another question is, how do I make the right ecosystem decisions? That was a question that was in the chat as well. And I really urge you to think about your existing ecosystem partners, leverage the AI solutions that they are using today, that they are introducing to their systems, so that you can leverage those. And then the last question is my data and technology ready for AI? You know, all the data that is used to answer questions, to summarize cases, to be part of a process is what the AI uses. Now, the question is if you've got garbage in, you'll get garbage out, right? If my data is not good, you may not get the right outcomes that you would like to see. Now, one thing that I've seen often is a lot of organizations really do an analysis of their data. They curate their data, they analyze it, they make sure that it's ready for AI, and they make sure that their technology solutions are ready to accept AI in them. With that, I wanted to thank Shanita and Alexa for today's discussion. And I wanted to thank the 300 or so participants that joined us live today. Your time is valuable as public servants, and I very much appreciate taking some time out of your day to learn about this topic, to ask questions, to learn from each other, and to ultimately think about how, again, this tool can be a new tool in your toolbox to be able to solve your business problems. With that, we'll close the webinar. I hope everyone has a great rest of the day.